So, I'm sure most of you guys have heard about the man, the myth, the legend, Mark Douglas, the absolute goat of trading psychology. This was a man who dedicated his entire life to cracking the code of what it means to be a successful trader. And not from a technical standpoint, but from a psychological standpoint. And what he discovered is that trading success comes down to 5 crucial frameworks that most traders never understand. 5 crucial pieces of the trading puzzle. And in my personal opinion, you need all 5 of these understandings to really build sustainable success in trading. If you're even missing one of these pieces, then it's really hard for everything to come together. And I almost guarantee that a large majority of traders have never fully grasped or understood these concepts. And if they have never fully lived them or actually put them into practice. So today I'm going to break it all down for you in this short video. The first crucial piece of the puzzle is thinking in probabilities. And I know that sounds obvious, yeah, trading probabilities, I get it. But have you actually fully grasped the weight of this concept? Because if you truly understood probability at a deep emotional level, then you wouldn't get pissed off when you took losses. So if you still get unreasonably frustrated every single time you take a loss, then you're not truly thinking of the big picture and of probabilities. If you truly and deeply understood it, and it was really internalized and baked into your brain, then it would feel crazy for you to revenge trade, to move your stop loss, to size up, because you know mathematically you'll make money if you follow the process. So it's very possible if you're struggling with trading, you have not fully internalized this concept yet, you don't fully trust it, or you don't fully trust your strategy. Because just imagine a casino who has a statistical edge on every single game. It would be crazy for them to break what they've been doing that has been making them money year after year, and to start doing something different if one of their clienteles started going on a winning streak in blackjack. It would be psychopathic. But we do this in trading. And I think it's for 2 main reasons. Either you have not fully understood and internalized the concept of probabilities, or you do not have an edge that you trust enough to put your full trust in to trust the math of probabilities. And here's the key. You never know what your next outcome of your trade will be. So you need to expect uncertainty in the market. You need to never get locked into the illusion that this trade has to be a winner. Or, I've lost the last 2 trades, this means this trade has to win. Or, wow, this setup looks so amazing, I know this is going to be a winner. I think this is one of Mark Douglas's most important points, is that everything is across a distribution of trades. You never know when you're going to have a losing streak. You never know when you're going to have a winning streak. So if you get your ego in there and start setting your own expectations on what's supposed to happen, you screw up all the math. You screw up the basic and simple math of an edge. And if you truly trusted probabilities and you trusted your edge, then going off your plan feels pretty stupid because you're going off something that is proven to make you money. So he talks about thinking in probabilities at a fundamental level, not just an intellectual level. You need to actually operate from the belief that this is true, that the math works out. Without that deeper core belief, when you go on a losing streak or things start to not go your way, what do? You start to change up the plan. You start to size up, move stops, overtrade, do all this crazy stuff. So stop giving a crap about individual trades. One trade means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of if you're actually successful at trading or not. And you can really gauge it how good at this you're getting of how frustrated you feel by losses. If you truly believe that everything is on a probabilistic scale and you're going to take losses, and it's a cost of doing business, if you have that right trader's mindset, then you're going to feel less and less frustrated when you take a loss. If you feel extremely frustrated when you take a loss, then that means that you probably have not fully internalized this belief yet, and you're not fully trading from a place of probabilities where you trust an edge. And the overall premise is that a losing trade is not necessarily wrong. As long as you followed your edge, then the trade is right. But we like to get in there with our little minds and make it mean something that it doesn't. This means I'm a loser. This means I'm a bad trader. And we're going to get deeper into that as the video goes on. So we need to have a general emotional detachment from the results. Traders create pain for themselves by expecting certainty in an uncertain environment. And they have so much attachment to the results of each trade that it creates a lot of pain. You take a trade, you expect it to work, you put all of your hopes and dreams behind that, and then it doesn't work out. And what do you feel? Frustrated. Because you're not thinking in a large sample size. But the expectation itself was the problem. The trade never had certainty, and no trade ever will. But beginners especially love to believe that there's a certainty out there, that there's some way they can be certain about the result. And unfortunately, that's not possible. But people crave that so much that they constantly look for it, and they think they found it, and then when a trade doesn't go in their direction, they get even more frustrated because of those expectations that they placed on it. So individual trade outcomes are meaningless, and the market owes you absolutely nothing on any one trade. Your edge doesn't owe you anything on any individual trade. It's like poker. If you pick up pocket aces and you go up against pocket kings, you should win that, but you won't always win that. And so expecting certainty on that my aces will always win, is insane. But yet we still think that exists in trading. A game where anything could happen at any moment. Trump could come out and say something psycho tomorrow, and it could tank the market or pump the market, and you never know what's happening next. So stop believing there's any certainty. All your edge promises is that over a large sample size, you're going to come out on top, and that's it. So when you truly internalize this and think from a place of probabilities, you stop trying to predict what trades will work, what trades won't. You stop feeling as frustrated and pissed off when you lose, and you just focus on executing, just like a casino would, over and over, knowing that things will play out in your favor. So that's the first very important piece of the puzzle. The second piece of the puzzle is what Mark Douglas calls the 5 fundamental truths. And these truths are basically the foundation that everything else is built on. If you don't accept these at a deep level, then nothing else works. So we already slightly touched on some of these, but we're going to get deeper into them. So the first fundamental truth is that anything can happen at any time. You can have the most perfect setup in the world. It can look beautiful with every single confluence aligning, and you can still lose. If that happens and you take that loss after waiting for that perfect setup and you get super pissed, then you have not fully internalized the teaching that anything can happen at any time. You still think that there's some way to control the outcome. And the moment you forget this truth, you start to make mistakes. You size up on trades that you're really confident in. You size up too big thinking, oh, this is a sure thing. I know this is going to work. You don't set a stop loss because you think, oh, there's no way this is going to go against me. And you hold on to a loser because you think, oh, it has to come back. There's no way it can keep going down. Anything can happen on any trade, always, forever. Truth number 2 is you don't need to know what happens next in order to make money. And this one screws with people's head because the entire financial industry is based on people predicting, oh, what's going to happen next? And that's how they end up making money. But in trading, it's not our job to predict what is going to happen next. It is only our job to follow a statistically proven process. Anybody who tells you, oh, I know exactly where price is going, or I can predict price with near certainty, are full of crap. There's no other way to put it. It just doesn't exist. So stop trying to predict and just start executing your edge. Truth number 3 that you need to even extra internalize is that there's a random distribution between wins and losses. It's just like the flipping a coin analogy. You could flip it over and over and over, and you could get 7 tails in a row, 8 heads in a row. But over 100, over 1,000 flips, you're going to start averaging out to 50-50. So this is where traders go wrong because they take 3 or 4 losses in a row, and then they think, okay, this means my edge sucks. But it actually may not mean anything. If you have done the work to actually prove your edge over a large backtest sample size, and it's mathematically proven, then that 3 or 4 losses could just be a random distribution of wins and losses and actually mean nothing. And it's so important that you have a deep belief that this is true because you can see how this would be emotionally hard for the mind to handle if it doesn't fully understand this, and if you don't fully trust your edge. Then in the midst of going through a losing streak, you start to spiral and start to blow up. And the sequence is always going to be completely random. Only the overall distribution matters. Truth number 4 is that an edge is nothing more than an indication that something has a higher probability of happening than another thing. Your edge is not a guarantee. It's not a crystal ball. It's just a mathematical advantage, and that's it. The illusion that your edge is some magical or crystal ball is what leads to gambling type behavior. Because when you see the edge, you get excited because you've been waiting for that edge for maybe days, for maybe hours, maybe even weeks or months if you're a swing trader. So when you finally see that edge show up, you think, oh, I'm going to put size on this. You get overexcited. This has to work. But all an edge is a mathematical advantage. So stop being under the illusion that it means anything more than that. It certainly doesn't mean that anything has to work. Truth number 5 is that every moment in the market is unique. This one is subtle but crucial. Every single moment in the market has never existed before and will never exist again. And why does this matter? It's because traders love to think in terms of past patterns. Like, this worked in the past, and this means that it has to work again. Or they think back to 3 weeks ago, and they say, oh my god, this looks the exact same as how it looked 3 weeks ago. And they delude themselves into thinking this has to play out the same way again. But every single moment is unique. The participants are different, the context is different, whatever's driving the move is different. This doesn't mean that patterns are totally useless, especially when they're combined with context. But at the end of the day, it's still just an edge. And each pattern, even if it looks like your perfect edge, is a new unique situation. When you truly internalize these 5 truths, something starts to happen within you. You stop trying to fight the market because you understand the nature of the market. The nature of the market is uncertain, but problems arise when we start trying to enforce our certainty, enforce our expectations on a wild beast. You can't tame a wild beast, but we try to do that, and then we get frustrated and pissed off when we can't. It's insane behavior. But when you just accept that it's going to be a wild beast, and instead of trying to fight it, you start to flow with it, that's when things start to change for you. And you may even hear me repeat some things in this video, but that's because it's so important that these become core beliefs for you. You honestly need to hear this over and over again to really get deeper into your mind and start to believe these things that I'm telling you. Because like I said, it's easy to intellectually understand it, but to actually deeply understand it and believe it on an internal level, when it's how you operate and it's the actual self-identity that you're running from, that's a completely different thing. And I've been trading for close to 3 years now, and I still work on these concepts on a daily basis to get my brain more and more on board with understanding these things. Because it's the foundation for long-term sustainable success, in my opinion. Alright, so this leads us into the third piece of the puzzle, which is true risk acceptance. And I feel like this is where most traders go wrong. Everyone thinks they accept risk. They think, yeah, I can lose money, I use a stop loss, I can go down and hit my stop loss. But Mark Douglas makes a distinction that most traders miss. There's a huge difference between intellectually acknowledging risk and then actually accepting risk at a deep emotional level. Here's how you can tell if you truly accepted risk. When you enter a trade and it immediately goes against you, how do you feel inside? Do you feel anxious, frustrated, pissed off? If you immediately feel knot in your stomach and the urge to do something like move your stop loss or enter more positions or exit your trade, then you haven't fully and deeply accepted the risk. You've acknowledged the risk intellectually, but emotionally you were expecting to win. True risk acceptance means genuinely being okay after taking a loss. Genuinely feeling like, okay, that's just a part of doing business, it's no big deal. Not hoping you won't lose, not believing you won't lose, and actually being at peace with the loss before it even happens. So I think this is a really important part of Mark Douglas's teachings, and that's to emotionally process the loss before you even take the trade. So already accept that the loss has happened, and already visualize yourself taking that loss before you even enter. So when you enter that trade, you already expect your account to be lower than it was before, because you've already fully internalized the fact that you could lose. And when you do this, instead of expecting the trade to win and expecting it not to lose, then something beautiful happens. Where if the trade goes against you, you're immediately less pissed off, because you've already deeply accepted that risk. A lot of the frustration we feel when we take a loss is a cognitive dissonance between what happened in the trade and what we are expecting to happen. When we're expecting something to win and then it doesn't, then we feel cognitive dissonance and we feel pissed off. But if we're expecting something to lose and then it does, then we don't feel any cognitive dissonance, and if it wins, then you just feel good about it. So when you're about to get into a trade, fully visualize the loss happening and then see if you feel emotionally comfortable with that. If you don't feel emotionally comfortable, or you still get pissed off after taking a loss, then size down until you feel emotionally comfortable. For a lot of things trading, sizing down is a cure-all. It helps you think more in probabilities, it helps you keep a more centered mind, and helps you be more easily able to accept losses. But even after sizing down, it is incredibly hard to take a loss still, because the mind is wired biologically to seek certainty and avoid uncertainty. So no matter what, with all of this, your mind is still going to get triggered after taking a loss. But what we're doing is trying to get our beliefs and our overall framework on board with understanding this, understanding where our mind is coming from, understanding why we get pissed, and then combating it with certain measures. The fourth piece of the puzzle is accepting that the market is neutral and your beliefs create your experience. The market does not know you exist. It does not care about you. It does not care about your problems. It's not out to get you, even though it certainly feels like it can be. Sometimes price moves in your favor, sometimes it doesn't. And it just is. There's not necessarily any malice or intention behind it towards you personally. But the way that you experience the market is completely driven by your beliefs and the filter that you put in your head of how you see things. Whatever happens in the market, you will use your beliefs and your filter to confirm. So this means if something happens to you, like, for example, getting stopped out, and you have a deep belief that they're hunting my stop loss personally, then this leads to more frustration than it needs to be. Because you're not at a neutral place with the market where you just see it as simple data or something happening that just is. You see it as a personal attack on you. So there's different beliefs that traders hold, and one of them is when it hits their stop loss, they think, this means I'm bad at trading. This means I suck. They experience their stop loss getting hit as pain of their inadequacy. Whereas this trader over here might have a more healthy relationship with losses and have more of the belief of, okay, losses happen, there are costs of doing business, it's no big deal. So which trader do you think is more likely to be successful? The one that gets pissed off and puts meaning around every loss? Or the one who takes a loss, is like, it's no big deal, and then just continues on as if nothing happened? The exact same thing happened to each trader, but internally they had two completely different experiences of it. So their actual beliefs created the reality of that situation, which also triggered a certain emotional response. This is why two traders can have the exact same experiences and even be following the exact same edge, but one trader does good and the other one doesn't. And you might think, okay, how's that even possible, Dave? Well, the thing is what I talked about before about the random distribution. If someone understands this information and they've totally internalized this and believed it, and let's say we have trader A and trader B, and they're both following the exact same edge, and both traders go through a losing month. On the year, their strategy may return 76% overall. But trader A crashes out after going on a losing streak, and trader B continues on as if nothing happened. And the month after that losing month ends up being trader B's best month of the year, just hypothetically. But because trader A couldn't handle losses and he took it personally and thought it meant he was a bad trader and put all this meaning behind it, and he didn't understand the random distribution, he actually ended up sizing up and blowing his account, and then he didn't get to experience that great month after the losing month. So the filter in which you see the market is extremely important. So you basically need to go into your brain and remove the beliefs that are hurting you and install them with new beliefs and new ways, helpful ways of seeing the market. Beliefs that hurt you are things like, I need to be right, losses mean I'm failing, the market is against me, I should be able to predict what happens next, good traders never lose, or good traders don't have losing months or weeks or trades. Whereas beliefs that help you are things like, losses are expected and normal, my job is to execute and not to predict, the market is neutral, consistency comes from process and not outcomes, and I don't need to be right to make money. This shift from one set of beliefs to another is a huge part of the journey of becoming a successful trader. It's not necessarily about finding the best strategy or another strategy. It's about changing the way you relate to trading itself and having the correct belief system, the correct viewpoint of the way trading actually is. Because of course we want to deal in reality. You know, if the reality was there is certainty in the market, then I'd be sitting here on camera and I'd be telling you, there's certainty, guys, it's amazing, there's a magical, beautiful unicorn strategy. But that's not how it is, so this is what I need to tell you. And these are the beliefs that you need to internalize to get yourself on board with the actual reality of the way things are if you're going to be successful in this game. But here's the thing, you can't just decide to believe something new. Beliefs are formed through experience. Beliefs are formed through doing. So you can intellectually understand these things, but actually internalizing them comes through repetition. Repetition of thought, repetition of action. doing the thing over and over again. So Mark Douglas suggests the sample size mindset. Basically saying to yourself, okay, for 20 days, I'm going to follow my rules, I'm going to follow my process and my plan to a T. I'm going to set these 20 days aside. And the only way I'll measure success for these 20 days is if I follow the plan or not. Doing this at first is going to be extremely hard, especially if you've been going in the opposite direction, not following your rules, going all willy-nilly. But after 20 days of doing this, you're going to start to build trust in yourself. And you're going to start to see, oh, I can do this. It is possible for me to go for 20 days and only follow the rules. And when you reframe your mindset away from, I need to make money trading, I need to win, I need to be a winner, into, I'm a winner if I follow my rules, I'm a winner if I follow my plan, then this begins to reprogram your actual brain and the way you think about trading. Alright, so the last piece is where everything comes together. Mark Douglas talks about different stages of a trader's development. Most traders are stuck in what he calls the random stage. They have no consistent rules, they make decisions based on fear and greed, and their results are entirely unpredictable. Supporting a family or a lifestyle in this stage of trading, impossible. Could have wins here and there, make a little money, but to actually sustain monthly income or sustain a yearly income, impossible. The goal is to reach what he calls the intuitive stage. This is where you can trade from complete psychological freedom, without fear, without hesitation, and in a state of flow where execution feels effortless. But you can't just jump from being random and all over the place to all of a sudden intuitive, where you're just flowing with the movements of the market. There's a stage in between, and there's work that you need to do. Most traders skip the mechanical stage. They lie to themselves saying, I can just use my magical discretion and my intuitive vibes to find winning trades. But the problem behind that is they haven't built up great habits yet. They haven't built up the ability to follow a mechanical edge. And they also have not built up enough screen time to have true intuition. So there's a period you need to go through, is what Mark Douglas says, where you're building this out in yourself so that you're able to reach a place where you can make intuitive decisions, fearless decisions, and execute like an absolute beast. So during the mechanical stage, you follow your rules with no hesitation. No, okay, this trade looks pretty good here, so I'm going to size up a little on this. This trade doesn't look as good, so I'm not going to take this. No. You have an edge, and you do not break your rules under any circumstances. You write your rules down, everything is laid out, and your only job is to prove to yourself that you can show up and do that, and that's the only way that you gauge your success. And to most traders, this sounds boring, it sounds limiting, and most traders will resist this because they think, okay, but my judgment adds value. My discretion adds value. And you wouldn't be wrong, of course, adding context and discretion adds value. But this is a phase that you're going through. It doesn't mean you can never have context and discretion in your trading. It just means that you need to go through this phase to get to that point. And the biggest point of this process is to build trust in yourself and build the belief system and the understanding of the market that will carry over into a full-time career. So every single time that you show up and follow your rules, you build trust in yourself. You build that extra belief that I am someone who can do this. And what Mark Douglas understood is that the reason most traders struggle isn't because they don't know what to do. Most traders know exactly what they're supposed to do. The problem is they don't do it. They hesitate on entries, they move stops, they cut winners early, they let losers run. They know these are mistakes while they're making them, but they can't stop. And why can't they stop? Because they've not built up trust in themselves. And you can't build trust in yourself based on intention. You need to base it through evidence. You need to actually prove to yourself that you can follow your rules no matter what. And that proof only comes from actually doing it. This mechanical stage creates that proof. You commit to executing your system perfectly for a defined number of trades. And every single time you follow your rules, despite wanting emotionally and mentally to deviate from them, you begin to build trust in yourself and you begin to build self-belief and self-identity that I am a good trader and I am someone who can do this. After enough repetitions, starting to follow your rules becomes normal for you. It's like anything in life. Anything you do consistently becomes your new normal. And every single good decision you make builds momentum in a positive direction. You stop fighting yourself because you've proven to yourself that you can be trusted. And from this place is where you're able to enter the zone. This is where you're able to find mental freedom. When you're sized down to a point where it doesn't bother you if you've taken a loss, you've built that trust in yourself that you're going to follow your rules. You don't have that fear you're going to go off track and start blowing up accounts. When you've built that screen time, that edge, things start to come together. And you begin to enter the state of peak performance. When you're completely focused on what's going on in front of you, and you're just flowing with the natural movements of the market without putting all this extra crap and filters on top of what's going on. In this place, you're completely present, completely focused, completely at peace with uncertainty. And all of Mark Douglas's teachings are a roadmap to reaching this place in your trading. Because just think about it, if you're oversized, if you're risking more money than you can afford to lose, then you're not going to feel in a carefree state. You're not going to feel in a place of flow. If you have not fully accepted that trading is a random distribution, then you're always going to be fighting against reality, and you're never going to be flowing with the actual reality of the market. And the 5 fundamental truths create this mental foundation. True risk acceptance creates the emotional foundation. Understanding that beliefs create reality helps you identify what's holding you back. And mechanical trading helps you build the trust necessary to let go and just trade. And the last very important piece of this entire puzzle, in my opinion, is having self-awareness. Understanding that you are not your mind, you are not your thoughts, you are the awareness or the observer of your thoughts, and you're able to step outside of your mind and watch your mind race around and watch what it's doing. You're able to watch your emotions in the moment, and you're able to build this buffer of awareness in between what you believe, what you think, how you feel, and the actual actions that you take. And it's easy to say, but harder to implement in your life. It's a constant commitment to stay conscious, to stay aware, and so that you're able to build this grounding in yourself. You're able to build this place of centeredness where your mind isn't pulling you around to every single direction that it wants you to go. And when you're able to create this separation from your mind, where you can just watch your thoughts non-judgmentally, then in that moment you are not that mind. You are not identified with that mind as being you, because the second you become identified with that, you start following what it tells you to do, and it tells you to do some pretty stupid stuff. So that's about it.